you really got to build that emotional stamina because 80% of success is failure, in my experience. And in employment, we avoid failure at all costs. In entrepreneurship, it's your staple food. Because that 20% that you succeed will make up for the 80. And it's just a matter of how do you, at least I'm processing this one. It's like, how do you put yourself together faster, but still in a holistic way that you're not also doing it in a superficial way and or making too many promises you can't keep. But you gotta make some promises to yourself first, right? So lesson number two is like you gotta fall down 8 times, get up nine, but understand that's just part of that process. And if you don't and you're trying to avoid those risks, you won't get to where you need to.
Born and raised in the motherland, chasing a better life. Story of an immigrant. Concrete pastures.
Hello, family. Welcome back to Concrete Pastures. And oh my God, I'm super excited to have a dear friend. And before we get there, thank you so much for tuning in. And to all of our new listeners, welcome to the family. This is a space that allows myself and others to share our stories as we deconstruct the world's view of immigrant status. And we unlock the joys, the laughs, and the bravery that being an immigrant brings. So please support us by subscribing and stay a while as we dive into today's episode. Today's episode, this has been long in the making. Oh my God, I'm just so grateful
Yeah.
that our next guest has been able to make space for me. Um, just a little bit about him. He's a fellow immigrant, my fellow Zambian. He was born in Zambia. Aaron moved to Australia in 2000 to study law and commerce at the University of Sydney. Over a 15-year period, he worked with the top 200 blue chip companies and gained experience in vocational education training, VET. After founding and failing in numerous startups, he eventually formed a winning formula on how to build his businesses right. Notably, he founded two successful businesses, which we're going to get into. So, without further ado, please welcome my dear friend, Aaron. How are you? Super excited.
Very, very well, Nancy. And thank you for that huge introduction. Sometimes I feel
I
like
had to steal it
I
somewhere.
I need to like say like I'm really paying her good money to say that, but it's all true, and I appreciate you seeing the good side of it. But I'm sure we'll dive into the other side of it of what it takes to also fail successfully, and I'm hoping I can share that as well. So thank you for the introduction. That was very heartfelt. I should have you introduce me everywhere I go.
I'll be coming. I'll be in your pocket. Don't worry. I'll be in your
Yeah.
pocket. But welcome. And you have been traveling all over the world. But I'm interested, we are all interested in your journey from Zambia to Australia. How was Zambia for you? Even though
Mm.
it's from the same country, I'm sure your experience is night and day from mine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's a great place to start, and thanks for having me on the show. It's really it's something I wanted to do. And I'm sure I have some space, and maybe that's also part and parcel where the introduction is worthwhile. I was born and raised in Zambia, capital city Lusaka, but I was also very fortunate, I would say, to have adventurous parents who maybe back in those days in the 60s or whenever that was Zambia was going through its independence, nationalism, patriotism, and my parents met actually in my hometown in Dola, so the story goes. But my dad was very much from a very poor background, and so was my mom. And so there was just this will to do better. And, I think my dad's a dreamer the more I see what's been created here. But they took on jobs in Osaka, and that's where I was born. And then we ended up in Kapiri, which is another province. That's where my young sister was born. And then there's another place we went to where my other older sister was born. So we started traveling, and I guess that's where this gypsy lifestyle, I'll call it, came in. I always loved going to new places, and when I was living in Dola, we moved to the farm. So I lived in a lot of places within Zambia, and went to different schools, met people, and I think we're just very mobile, and that's really stayed with me my whole life. So that was my Zambian experience, and through that we always had businesses, we always did side hustles because the kinship system. There's always kids and relatives, and then you adopt more kids. So we were biologically three of us, but I always remember sometimes there were nine of us because my dad's brothers or sisters would pass on, would just adopt some kids. But one of my really, really dear brothers is Anthony. You meet him one day, I'm sure. I consider him my brother, but since we were nine, he lived with us, so I can't really say he's not my brother, but he was biologically my cousin, kind of my cousin technically, but in Zambia, you just kind of call everyone that. So
Yeah.
that was me growing up, and my fondest memories, I would say, were in the copper belt where I live now, and I lived on a farm, and that's where I think a lot of my character has been built. So, in a nutshell, that kind of went from about zero to, I'd say, 15, 16 before I started wanting to go overseas. Yeah.
Wow. What made you decide to leave? 'Cause you seem to
Wow.
be having a great life. You're moving from place
Yeah.
to place.
Yeah. See, that's another podcast, but I've never shared this actually. That's a good question. I, without getting into it too much for now, but I'm happy to come back and unpack that one later.
We are not.
I, I was, no, it's its own story, but there was push and pull factors in short. I was very adventurous, very curious about going to places to see how other countries functioned and worked. And, all of us to some degree see the US where you are now and think, anything is better than here. The movies are very influential. You want to meet someone, you think, if you want to make it big, you go abroad.
Yes.
So I sort of obviously subconsciously bought into that. Um, but we didn't have the resources. We didn't have the wherewithal then. But I was always like masterminding, how do I get myself out of here? But to be honest, I still really had opportunities here. My parents through time, I call them semi-middle class. It's not really a class system here, but they'll be middle class. We went to eventually good schools later. Lived in good places. We had 3 square meals most of the time, and apart from when we were farming, sometimes we had some issues there. But the point was, I had a very good friend. His name was Nicholas, and this guy I met through high school. I went to Mukushi for school, and but we were primary school friends. Went to high school friends, and I was very, very close to him. And basically, when we were kind of graduate, he was one of those kids. I've always been entrepreneurial, so I'd always try things, get into trouble. He was the guy. He was like my compass. He would keep me straighter than I would have been if he was there. Probably end up locked up somewhere. Um, and he was just kind of like my guardian angel in some ways. I'm very, very fond of this guy. So what happened was, when we kind of finished school, we had a situation where I started driving. I was one of the early ones because the farm you start driving tractors and all sorts of things. So I got my license really early. But on this one occasion, got permission from his parents to go to another city called Ndola, Kitwe, which is about 45 minutes from Ndola. So we went out to a nightclub there, and there was two other guys. Now, unfortunately, you're young. Two other guys stole their cars from their parents, and a bunch of us guys. Obviously, there was a couple of girls from our school that were there, so we followed them there. He liked one particular girl, and to me, I was like making it a personal effort to connect them and hook them up. That was one of my things because he was also just as shy as I was, actually. So easier to match make other people than yourself, right? Anyway, so long story short, back to what made me leave. Along this time, I was selling cabbages. I was a cabbage boy from the farm, so I was keeping myself, paying for everything. So many crazy stories I can share another time, but I really loved working, selling cabbages to marketeers at this area called Baluba, which is halfway between $20. And when I'd get some money, I'd then pick up my mates. He was just with me everywhere. We were like Batman and Robin type of people.
Mm.
And so this particular night when we went out, the other two guys who were not necessarily responsible drivers or licensed drivers, they were drinking quite a lot. So on the way back, some of these girls, there was a miscommunication. So the story goes, They ended up back in Ndola where we were. So when we heard this, he says to me, "Hey, I want to go back to meet this girl over there." And I was like, "Okay," but I was too preoccupied doing something at the time. And so I said, "Okay, no, I'll come." But he got impatient, so he jumped in a car with these two other guys, or three other guys. And unfortunately, I came maybe 30 minutes later. But I got to the place where I thought these people were, met the people. I was like, "Hey, so where's Nick?" And like, no one could find him. I got really worried. So I said, maybe he ended up being dropped off somewhere. So I tried, those days there was no phones. And I couldn't call his parents. So I went there, just kind of sneaked in to see if he was at the window. He wasn't home. I couldn't say, "Hey." I was responsible for it. So unfortunately, Nancy, they were involved in a very bad car accident. Not too far from our farm, car turned over. You know, two people were thrown out of the car, died of impact. He was thrown out of the back seat, had a brain damage situation. I drove up and down, finally found the body. Hospital issues were not up to scratch, and they still aren't in some cases, as you know. But picked up what I could, took him to the hospital. Um, it was a very difficult time, and I think I remember because I was 16.
Wow,
And
I'm sorry about that.
yeah. It's okay. So what was hard was we had to bury about three of my friends at the same time, and I think in the period he was in a coma for a long time. It was very stressful because I still had got to work, come back, check on him, and I don't know because of the way his brain was hit at the same time, it damaged it, but he was just repeating my name in this cycle. So it was just one of those really, really traumatic times. But we lost him obviously up some time. We tried to operate, just things were getting mismanaged, but we make it. And when he came back, it was just one of those very difficult things for me because whatever I did with him. It was just this constant reminder. So there was just this need to just get away. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna go to the capital city. This is so funny. I've never shared this on a podcast, but I'm gonna go to the capital city and just be away from my town. But even there, I still felt it wasn't far enough. So I literally just started going as far away as I could. And then obviously we had plans with him to go abroad, do the whole thing together for university. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to fulfill my dream with my friend in spirit. And that was kind of like the final pull that just made me go, I'm doing this. And about 16 and a half or more, jumped on a plane those days. You fly out of Zimbabwe. Lucky for me, there's a whole crazy other story of an Australian missionary found me at the farm, supported us to get my paperwork done. Uh, we also scraped together some money as a family. And by 2000, I landed in Australia on my own with $200 in my pocket, and basically it's do or die from there. So that was the journey actually of how I lived,
Wow.
and I ended up staying longer than I would. There was no holidays. It was just like I'm not going home, And that lasted for a good 7 years. So yeah,
I'm sorry about that. That
no, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. It's all part of the character building times, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. So you get to Australia, $200. It's similar to my bucks. My mom only gave me $200 to.
Yeah. And those days was like traveler's checks or something. I don't know if
Oh
you're
no,
too
she
young.
gave me cash. Here's
Wow,
$200 for you.
you were balling. Yeah, you're richer than me. I couldn't even catch the traveler's check, so I
No,
ended up with
traveler's checks
nothing.
was as good as cash too. So for
Mine weren't signed. I don't know how the whole thing kind of. Don't ask. It was a mess. I think I still had them for like 10 years, and then I just
yeah,
threw them
I know
away.
my mom used to have them. And then
Yeah,
when the first time I saw them here, I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is a thing.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
my mom gave me $200.
Wow, wow. And it doesn't even get your taxi in some places.
Yeah,
Oh, the things
it
we
fed
don't
me
think
back
about.
then. Back then it fed me, but before I ran out of money, I had to get a job.
Yeah. Okay, we have a similar story. That's cool. Yeah, maybe it's a Zambian thing to just like, hey, here's 200, do or die, sort yourself out. That's your runway. It must be a Zambian send-off thing then, because I've
It
heard the
could
story.
be, it could be, it could be. So you get to Australia. What
Yeah.
was the first thing that you did? Like who received you? Where did
Oh man, that was a rough start. So these same travelers checks, get
uh,
out of the plane. I've never been abroad. I mean, like I told you where I came from. I'm a farm boy from Angola, from Mwanza. So I get there, and I tell the story to everyone. It's like, you know, again, I was like, I'm not like, first thing I said was, there's so many white people. You know, I was just like, what am I doing here? I really, really felt in a foreign land. And you know, you don't think about it because you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go and Western world, whatever. But
Yeah.
when I got there, it was culture shock. And then some guy says to me, "Hey mate, how you going?" I was like, I'm going, I want to go by taxi. What do you mean? No, mate, how you going? You know what I mean? So I could really do the Australian thing. But as those days I couldn't, right? So I was just like checking the dictionary. I'm going, I was told this was an English speaking country. They speak Australian. So that all messed me up. And then I'm trying to explain that I needed to go to a boarding house, like a homestay place.
Chicks hurt.
Was that? This is just the beginning. It gets worse. So I'm trying to get to this Australian place, right? And then um, just tell me to summarize anytime, but this is just traumas after traumas.
I'm here for
So
this. I'm here for
there's
this.
taxis there, and back where we come from, you start negotiating. So me, I'm like, hey, so how much to get to this joint? And I was with some other foreigner refugee looking guy. I won't discriminate what he looked like, but he was definitely not from there.
Yeah.
And then he goes, yeah, mate, I think he was Australian, but he was like migrant to Australia. I was like, yeah, mate, we have a meter. I'm looking here, like, you have how many meters is it? What do you mean? He says, no, we have a meter. It's like back and forth. Then after some time, it goes, okay, all right, how much you got? And me, I think, I got 200 travelers checks, right? But you negotiate your distance. So me, I'm like, but I don't know how far it is. So I said, don't laugh, it gets worse. So I start negotiating with the guy in dollars, and I've got kwacha in my head. So he says, well, how much you got? I was like, well, I've got, I'm thinking, if I say 200 is, I need this for food and other things. And I was like, okay, now I've got $50. I goes, no, $50 is not enough. Okay, 75. Now here's the point. It was like a $10 trip to get there. So I don't know how we managed. Oh yeah, sorry. I think I had 250. $50 was cash. So we negotiate somehow, and then he says, okay, I'll take the 50 then. Knowing full well it was $10. So I jump in the taxi. Me, I think I've done a good deal. He takes me the roundabout way because Concord West and the airport are very, very close together. And so this meter's off. The dude's made some money. I get there, and then drops me off wherever this place with the homestay. I jump out of the homestay. I get to the place. Me, I think I've done a great deal. Talk to the homestay after some time, and we're talking, having dinner. And the guys go, "How much did you pay for your taxi?" I said, $50. It was really good. We negotiate. You negotiate. You don't negotiate. There's a meter. I was like, but I didn't know how many meters it was. So I couldn't negotiate. He says, no, there's a meter. It's like six. I was like, dude, too much. I slept with a headache that day, and I'm like $50 down. And then there's like, oh, by the way, you gotta buy a ticket. It's $50 to get to university and back, and all these places for your registration. And I'm like, is that like for a month? And I like, no, that's like for a week. I was like, what? you know, the whole thing. Oh, and then you gotta pay your deposit for your homestay. I said, how much is that? Oh, well, it's like $150. So
You ran
there
out
you
of
go.
money. That's another
Well,
thing.
no, and then I gave them the traveler's checks, and they couldn't work. So I had to work my way for like 6 months to pay them.
Oh my God.
So I stayed there longer than I wanted to, but that was my Australian first day. It was chaos, absolutely chaos, man. Stressed out of the wazoo. It was funny. So that was my first day. Yeah, I'll never forget it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
How
good.
was school? When
What's
you
that?
How was college? How was the university when you finally got into the
Yeah,
university?
so that's a funny story too, but there's just too many. But the funny thing is, you come with your IGCSEs, right?
Yeah.
You think because the A level thing, and I did okay. You go to first year uni or second or something. That's what I thought, and that's how the paperwork kind of made it out because I got accepted into Sydney University. But they have a foundation course, so now it's commonplace. But those days, there was another 11,950. I remember that because I was like, I had to go through foundation year because they were like, you could have made your school your qualifications up because you're from Africa. And that's kind of where some of these, like, you don't think it's discrimination. You're just thinking, these guys are just corrupt. They want me to pay something. So I was like, okay, listen, I'm a dishwasher now. So listen, how much just to get me through? That's not trying to bribe the guy. Like,
Yeah.
no, we don't do that sort of thing here, you know. But you have to do the foundation here. So I ended up not going to uni. I had to do another 9 months to pass a test to get into law school because I didn't believe my grades were legit. So I ended up washing dishes for longer, basically, again, because that was my first job. That's another crazy story. But I had to do foundation. Then I did well in foundation year. Then I went to my first job. But I was trying to explain this to my family. I'm like, listen, guys, I'm not in uni. What do you mean you're not in uni? We send you to these schools. You're supposed to like get ahead. We don't have money. You have to finish your school. I'm like, no, you don't understand. There's a foundation. You're like, what's a foundation? What's wrong with your grades? Well, you like, you know. So they just didn't understand it in a way. I didn't understand it, and there's just a lot of confusion. And I think a lot of international students, particularly, you just don't know the right questions to ask. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this, those days there was a lot of forged documents or degree qualifications.
Yeah.
So they just really ruled out anyone from certain countries and saying you just have to do this. So and it was a good money spinner for them too. So yeah, it just took me back a year. So it was quite frustrating, but proved my way through. And honestly, I met some amazing people there because now you're in these classes. I don't know if you had to do that in these classes with people from China, you know, those days, Burma, everywhere, Brazil. And so I made all these like international friends instantly, and the language barriers were there. I had to do basic English to like, how do you do? And, you know, and people like, you speak really good English. I mean, like, do you guys in Africa like don't speak African? I'm like, my goodness, you know, so you go through that whole explanation thing. So it was really good. It was amazing transformation, but it did take me back a year, so I was slightly frustrated by that. But
Wow. I mean, with me, I didn't even bother to like
yeah,
even truly like apply because of how the process is here in America. So for me, I basically just did my high school diploma. It was a year almost.
uh-huh.
And at the time I was doing babysitting, so I just did my high school diploma and then I went to college. I couldn't afford uni. It's too
I
expensive.
should I should have done that. I
No,
should.
it's too
Where were
expensive.
you when I was doing it hard, man? I should have done. That's what it's. I don't. It never even crossed my mind. Never even crossed my
No, it was just too much. I when I looked at the process, I
mind.
asked around, and then when they were telling me, "Oh, you have to transfer your credits. The credits have to be approved," blah, blah, blah. I was like, "This is too
Yeah,
much work.
yeah,
Too much work
yeah.
for me. I'm just gonna do high school diploma. It's 1 year, and
Mm,
I'll basically just go to community college." So I went to community college. That's what I could afford because here in the US, you pay as an international student,
yes, same, same.
and it's double what
Mhm.
the residents pay. So
Yeah,
it, mm-mm.
3 point some places. Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. I was always behind, but I always made friends to pay in installments, and I was talking dishwasher price installments. So it took me so long because you don't like get a scholarship or you know these
No,
student cards, nothing.
no, no,
It's
no.
it's
I
absolutely
tried. I even when I finally got like my permanent residence here, I tried to apply for financial aid.
mm,
It was not working.
yeah,
It,
no,
it didn't work.
no.
So
A lot of
you
people don't get this. This is really good that you're sharing this because I think people who want to go to the foreign countries, they just think, oh, it's gonna get easier. It's one of the most challenging things you could ever do and most expensive as well. So I think they just think everyone who can afford to go abroad must be from a wealthy family and it can't be further from the truth, eh?
no, it's very expensive to be an international student, and
Yeah,
if you can afford it to come here, you have to be prepared. Like
yeah,
to go anywhere, like you have
yeah,
to be truly prepared to spend that money. If
yeah.
you're doing well in your country, I just advise everybody just stay in your country. It's not
Mm,
worth
mm.
it to go through this stress. Come visit. That's it. Just
Yeah,
come
yeah,
visit and that's it. You don't want to
yeah,
start over because they don't approve. Even here, they don't
yeah,
really approve of
yeah.
whatever qualifications you may have in your
Mhm.
country. Um, so you finish uni. I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah.
You finish
No,
uni.
please go ahead. It's too much stories, eh?
Uh, what, what
While
did
washing dishes the whole time. I got a
that's all you did?
dishwashing
Just
certificate.
washing dishes? Do they offer employment in your university over there or no?
Well, I think by now they can't lock me up over there, but I was an illegal worker for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Cash in hand, just doing odd, like crazy hours, the grave shifts, which the locals didn't want to do. And yeah, but like I said, the blessing in disguise. I grew up on a farm. We just work, so I just outworked everyone. So I kept my job, and then I got really good at it, and then I got promoted through it. So I ended up being like a manager of the same restaurant, which happened to be a Jewish restaurant, by the way. So I can make masa bowls and kosher food to levels you can't even imagine.
Oh, I love
But
kosher.
that's where. Oh, okay, okay, we'll have
And
a
you
chat.
you can make challah bread because that's our favorite bread in this house.
That was a bit of advice, but yes, I could. And we would do that for most of our guests there because it was like an RSL club for Jewish people, Jewish retirees. So they had this real need. But the beautiful thing, like I said, is that's where my networking started and the owners. Yeah. But in answer to your question, it's just I had to work. And so even my school was really like I'll be finishing at midnight, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Because once the restaurant's done, 300 covers a day, that's where the dishwashing starts. Then you take out the rubbish and then you clean up these muscle bowl things you cook in. I mean, the time I'm done is 3 o'clock in the morning. So I did a deal with the owner. I just used to sleep in the storeroom for a very long time. And then I just go straight to school, to uni and do that and then come back and keep doing it over because pay school fees or get kicked out, really. So that was 6.5 years and I got really good. I love washing
Six and a
dishes.
half years of sleeping at your restaurant where
In and
you
out. There were breaks where a friend would take
in
me
and
in.
out, but still like, and then committed to uni.
Yeah, I did that. And still run little businesses on the side. Yeah. Did sales jobs in summer, like selling door-to-door stuff, whatever I could. Because my school fees, as you said, were 2, 3 times more than they needed to be. So after you pay your rentals, or at least for us, just transport, just to get anywhere on trains, most of my money would go into just getting from A to B. Uh, that I'd need extra cash for my school fees. So,
Wow, that's determination, man.
yeah, well,
So you finished uni. What was your first job? You didn't stay in this.
first real job. So funny. I got that's crazy.
You didn't
So
stay.
6.5 years took me to get my residency. Then I could. I applied for residency as a skilled migrant as a cook because my law degree didn't carry enough points. I don't know how it works in the US, but in Australia you get these point systems. So you gotta get say like over 80 points. They'll give you points if you're young. They give you points if you're from Western countries, more points than Africa, of course. So they just give you points for different things. They give you
Wow.
points. You have qualifications. But in this particular time, there's too many graduate lawyers, locals, and people complaining about foreigners taking their jobs. So they gave more points to people who did diploma level technical skills, hairdressing, cooks, garbage collection, because those were the places most Australians didn't want the jobs. So a lawyer could finish school with honors, get say the cut mark, maybe let's just call it 120 for now to get your residency. So you need a big chunk from somewhere. So I remember this time I looked at my law qualifications and I would get something like 40 points. Then my cooking experience, because I've worked for 6 years and I got recognition of prior learning, I did some certificate diploma level, I'd get 80 to 90 points for that. Why? Because there was just more demand for that position. So I never applied for my residency as a lawyer. I applied for my residency as a qualified cook. And that's something nobody knows. And that's how I got my residency. So in answer to your question, I got my residency, but then along the way, I also then I was already in the field of direct sales, and I got noticed by an insurance company that were doing corporate insurance, and I was already like a supervisor. So I was like, okay, I can like go back and work in the kitchen and be like a secondhand cook. And I've done too many hours. I smelled of masa bowls for too many. I just smelled of, and I had dreadlocks, long dreadlocks. So I just got tired of smelling of like food all the time. This is why I can't cook. I just refuse. People are like, oh, but you, I was like, no, I've done my time. Don't even, it's not even romantic. I don't have any brownie points. Don't care if I don't get them. So I'm never cooking, just in case you got any funny ideas. But I can cook though. That's the funny thing. But anyway, so this insurance guy said, "Why don't you come in as full time for running a call center of 100 people as a supervisor. And the pay was better than being a junior lawyer. So I was like, okay. So I did that because I had so many bills to pay. But I took on a job also as a junior attached person in this foundation. What do you call it those days? I can't remember, but it's like a management program thing they take you through in this law firm. And I was working there. I was like, okay, let me see who the top dog is, what they do, and how they live. And I realized the idea of what I had of what the lifestyle of a lawyer is and day to day of what the lawyer does. And I also along the way got diagnosed, not diagnosed, but I did all these assessment tests. I actually have dyslexia. So going to read contracts and all these, minor, but still there, wasn't exactly something I was gravitating towards. So my first job ended up being in insurance, working in a call center as a retention management consultant. And I just love talking to the business people that call in, try and keep their policies with me. And then I just built the team from there and then basically got invited into all sorts of other meetings. So yeah, that was my track for a while. And I just remembered trying to explain this to my father. He goes, so wait, you paid over $120,000, suffered for 6.5 years, and you're telling me you don't want to practice? And I'm like, yeah. So that didn't go down. We didn't talk for a couple of years. Because he was like, so what do I tell people I introduce you? Those days, entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing. These days you wear the t-shirt, you're cool. It's like, but you're educated. Why are you a business person? And I get, but Dad, I'm passionate. I'm like, I'm not somebody now. I'm passionate for what? I can't tell my friends my son is a businessman. Those are thieves. So it was this crazy transition of identity crisis. It was mad. So I'm glad you found it funny. I cried. I was ashamed.
Listen, the perception of back home, I'm laughing because of our culture.
Yeah.
Perception is everything. Like you want to introduce my son. My son is abroad. I want to introduce my son. He's a lawyer. He went to school, is a lawyer. So when you're coming back and telling them, oh no, I don't even want to practice.
And then like, I'm passionate about changing the world. It's like, and then you hear them go, Mommy, come and hear your son. These ways. Come and hear what your son, it's your son, huh? It's not my son anymore. Come and hear what your son is saying. So there was just these crazy conversations of trying to explain. And they couldn't, because also they didn't realize, being a Black person in Australia, there was also some of these, not that you didn't make it, you just, I knew I had to work 10 times harder than the average person in Australia.
100%, yeah.
It's like that everywhere, right? So there's nothing new here. I'm just talking to maybe the people who want to travel that realize this.
Yeah.
We just work 10 times harder for the same opportunity. But in my head, I was like, if I'm going to work 10 times harder for the opportunity, I better work at something I really want to do.
Yeah.
Because I was also, in so many undescribed words, told, you don't have a surname that I think would make a good partner in this, firm. There was these type of things going on. Or maybe you should train the refugee janitors down there. And, I ended up, and that's how I got into training. I would train up migrants coming through to integrate into the corporate scene. And I fell in love with that. So yeah, I've asked a question, but I put other things in it. It's just my first job led me to training and development, sales reps and teams and building. And I was like, didn't know what it was called. There was no coaching those days. There wasn't facilitators, kind of fancy words. It's like teachers.
Yeah.
And you're not a teacher. You trying to explain that to your parents. Like, you want to be a teacher, why did you go to law school? It was one of those things. No, these are facilitators, corporate training is a teacher. You always go back to that. So I was like, okay, whatever. Just let it go. But yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
Wow. Wow. This is what I live for. And
Nice.
you're making my day.
Nice. You're welcome.
It's because people don't really understand it. until you really experience it. And me hearing it from that it's not only in America, Australia is also as
Oh,
hard, even harder than
next
America.
level.
For
Next
me, at
level.
least New York is a bit easier from um, that angle, from being a lawyer, and then all these points is too much. It's too much. You pass the bar here and you become
Yeah,
a lawyer. That's it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's just a lot. Wow. So, like, is this where your entrepreneurship was born? Is this why you fell in love with being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it started picking up. I don't know if I can use it on the podcast, but it became sexier. The world caught up with the word, and it became rock star stuff. But
Yeah.
that's not where it started. For me, it started selling cabbages back in Andola. You know, figuring out like, oh my goodness, I want to pay for my school fees, or I want that shoe that my rich friend has. I can sell 1,000 of these, make this much profit. So I started thinking in those terms back there, but there was just no career for it, or it wasn't encouraged because you had to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant. You get my point. And when I saw business people, they were crooks, or they
Yes.
were who couldn't make it in school. And then for career parents, particularly in our generation, Zambia is going through a renaissance where Black people were becoming managers. So it was important, don't get me wrong, but that stuck for us because we're also very much in a parastatal culture where jobs were the thing. So you want to climb that ladder, the government will look after you, or companies will look after you. But we weren't really enterprising yet. I mean, these are just generalizations, right?
Yeah.
So it was a minority thing. So when I went there was a little bit of what's the right word? Shame, because I knew my parents wanted me to be more
Yeah.
with the society. Because even when I tell people I got a lot of oh, they say, oh, I'm running a business in garbage collection. Mm, it's different. And you want to date my daughter? It didn't work out. I didn't forget dating. It never happened. So I always hit with a degree in dinner tables, but if I really like someone now. But anyway, so so the entrepreneurship was born back there, but I think it got its name in Australia. And then I remember this. I went to a rally through insurance, and I saw Jim Rohn's guy and Brian Tracy and these motivational speakers on stage. I was just blown away. At first, I thought they invited me to a church thing because that's where you see people really excited, you know. But
Yeah.
I was just, these guys are just talking about things I want to do, you know. So they encouraging me to believe in my dream, believe I can be more than I am. Particularly if you've been in these cultures where they're just like black people over there, or the Aboriginals, or
Mhm.
you can't get a high paying job because blah blah.
Yeah.
I was like, actually, I can. I can just not even queue up in that line and just create my own queue, and that was mind blowing to me. So they coined it as entrepreneurship, and then I could easily trace the steps all the way back to what I've always been doing to make my extra income, so I
Mm.
can live the life I deserve, or at least I wanted to. You know, yeah. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question, but it was really
No, it
coined.
does. It does. I know through the journey of, I come from a world of entrepreneurship. My mom, my grandmother, they've all been in the business world. And you have ups and downs, and you've had a fair share of those opportunities of, I guess, failing. Do you mind sharing?
Tuition.
Do you mind sharing like some of the lessons that you've been able to learn? Because I was counting from what the internet says. It says 20 times, more than 20 times, but
Oh, I've been bankrupt
you
so
told me
many
it's
times.
more.
I don't name it. Oh yeah, I'm just too embarrassed to put it because people don't believe it. And full disclosure, and this is really good. We're doing it now. um, okay, I'll come to this part later. But like you said, it's an up and down thing. And I'm really excited now more that you've asked this question because I guess when I ever do these type of things, which are very few now, once I'm becoming more private, it's just like I'm going through another transition, and I'll share very openly why and how that's happened.
Yeah.
At least the vantage point of where I'm at now, because even like just very quickly, this is a logo here, and what that means to me is something very transformative, because it's been the making in myself for the last 41 years. I feel that way. I'm 41 years now, but I feel like it's just been a seed growing into where it's going now. So in answer to your question about the failures and the lessons, I would call tragedy an opportunity for someone to be introduced to their true self. Okay.
Mm.
And the reason why I think that's a good place to start is, as you heard in my story, I've experienced, and maybe I'll be a little bit more open. There's been abuse in my childhood. Um, there's been misfortune, deaths, so many deaths that if you honestly ask me, am I afraid of death? The answer is no, because I've just been so exposed to it on a personal level. In the West, it was so different. People say people pass away, but you don't see them. I mean, unless you see them collapse, but death isn't like something you're really. It happens so quickly and so distant. It's like almost people are afraid of. Whereas in our culture, someone dies, you're probably the one who's going to take them to hospital, like I did. So I
Yeah.
was very engaged with tragedy. But now there's things like post-traumatic stress and all these things. We'll get into that later. Where counseling is such a beautiful thing, even though I say this openly for men. We shy away from it too much, but there's a lot of suppressed emotions that just kind of show up in other areas, particularly career-wise, and other places in relationships that hurt people, that kind of thing. So I only started learning this much, much later. But I guess in terms of lesson, the first one when Nick passed away, or my grandmother passed away, and I was there when that happened. I was even younger then. I think I was 9 or less. Um, I just started asking myself about what life is all about, and why this loss feeling comes around, and how do you celebrate people's life once they're gone, and how do you even, maybe this is too spiritual for this podcast for today, but how do you equip yourself enough to feel closer to those that you've lost, so that it doesn't become something that bashes you around and limits you to live?
Mm.
These things I just kind of learned along the way. So I thought I'll bring that in as a starting point, because it's like an emotional muscle that I feel is so necessary to prepare you for the entrepreneurship journey. So when it now came to me now going, okay, now let me start dealing with my financial literacy, my financial relationship with money, and how money is not bad. Money doesn't make you evil. Being a business person isn't being a criminal. But I'll get into that in a second about where I'm at now. But there's just a lot of gray lines that maybe society is kind of built in, um, that we never question, because you're just living within the frame. But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be usually sometimes outside the frame. And there's such a thin line between being a genius and being crazy. You're a hero when you succeed. And I've been very lucky and fortunate that some business ideas I've done have led me to some success that people go, yeah, that guy knows what he's doing. And it's easy then for people to follow and graduate or listen to me like you're doing now, which I appreciate. But I never forget, and I'll be very honest, because I'm just at that level, I'm really reflecting on all of these things. 80% people don't see behind the scenes is where I've just absolutely failed, fallen on my face, made some poor, 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 poor business decisions that have not just cost me financially, and I'll say this openly, they've cost me relationships, and not out of maliciousness. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you have good intentions. You take people's money,
Yeah.
they invest in your dreams. You want it to work, but you're also quite naive in some ways, or you're not experienced enough yet to know all the moving parts in the business, that you just execute in good intention, but it blows up and looks like you just abused people's trust. Because
Mm.
where there's money, there's trust. Trust and money go together, if you think about
Yes.
it. Every time you make a purchase, I tell people this when I'm training them in sales, so a little bit of a workshop here. But the minute you take your wallet out and you're motivated to give it to someone, you're basically saying, I trust you for the promise you've made me, even before you've consumed the product. Okay. And so the symbolism of parting with money says you trust that person. So for us business people, when people give you money, they're saying they're trusting you with themselves. But that's where the betrayal starts. Because if that money then doesn't come back as profit and you go bankrupt, like I've done a few times, it strains relationships.
Mm.
It strains relationships because that's other people's hard-earned cash. So as an entrepreneur, you really start because you need to scale, you need investments, no matter which way you cut it.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work out, how do you put yourself together and how do you show up in shame or whatever and still say, hey, I messed up and I'll come good with that. And sometimes come good can take you decades. Because say in the past I've lost millions. Um, but there's that intention to want to pay people back. And some people do get there, but there's a big majority of people who just never have the gumption to keep going. The shame swallows them up or the disappointment or the failure. So I guess the second thing I would say is like you really gotta build that emotional stamina because 80% of success is failure, in my experience. And in employment, we avoid failure at all costs. In entrepreneurship, it's your staple food. Because that 20% that you succeed will make up for the 80. And it's just a matter of how do you at least I'm processing this one. It's like how do you put yourself together faster, but still in a holistic way that you're not also doing it in a superficial way and or making too many promises you can't keep. But you gotta make some promises to yourself first, right? So lesson number two is like you gotta fall down 8 times, get up 9, but understand that's just part of that process. And if you don't and you're trying to avoid those risks, you won't get to where you need to.
Being an immigrant can be hard. Having been away from my home country for over 20 years has allowed me to experience these hardships firsthand. Throughout my journey, I've had a lot of challenges that were hard to bear. Juggling adjustment to a new country, obtaining my immigration papers, getting married, having children, establishing my career, and finding time for myself. Even though I've always had faith, I also relied on therapy, which gave me the tools to cope with the issues life brought me. My fellow dreamers, let's remove the stigma around therapy and normalize seeking help with today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Go to betterhelp.com/concrete pastures for 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp and get matched with a therapist who will listen and help in as little as 48 hours.
The third one, which is closer to my heart, honestly, through my entrepreneurial journey, I went through a very difficult divorce. Um, you, as a father, at least, or a provider in my case, you again, you see, you're optimistic. You know the business numbers on paper it makes sense. You're ready to make the jump. You put your family at risk, but half the time you're not really sure about one, where the end destination is, and two, unfortunately, how long it's going to take you to get there.
Yeah.
So your partner now starts having to make sacrifices that they never planned to do because you're in a union, particularly when you're transitioning from employment, and I'm hinting here, but transition from employment to entrepreneurship full time.
Yep.
A partner, very typically, like an employee would say, how long are you going to take to get there? You'd be like, well, actually, my degree is 5 years. See, it's fixed. My job salary will be on the 30th of the month, fixed. Or I earn 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month, so I'll pay you back in fixed, right? But entrepreneurship, you can make $10,000 one day and make nothing for 4 years.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate those expectations to your partner? And two, should you expect them to support you? So the lesson for me there was one, I was quite selfish in the way I went about it the first time because I was just so optimistic. I'm a dreamer like my father, you know. I wanted to do well for my family. I also wanted to do well for myself, but I made a lot of promises without having experience. And so what that did is when we got into a relationship, we had a child along the way. I was trying to come good on something. but it just took longer than I thought. To be specific, it took me 7 years instead of the 2 years I was promising. And I had no idea. It was just my skill sets weren't there. My acumen wasn't there. My maturity as a father, as a husband, it was just so many factors. I just put so much pressure on people. So all I could advise people, my younger self and anyone else, is just like, if you feel you got a big dream and you want to fight for that dream, understand that people never see it for you if they can't see it for themselves. It's number one. And so you can't expect them to support you because it's not their dream to begin with. And that's where I think I take responsibility. I'll strain those relationships because I'll be like, yeah, but you're my partner. You should. No, they don't have to do nothing. They're not the ones taking those risks. They're like, yeah, but the job, stay. You were a lawyer. You were this. Why don't you just be normal? And you're just like, look at me. Does this person look like they're gonna do well in the 9 to 5? But you can't say that. You know what I'm saying? You have to navigate and back to this adapting conversations and just maybe making less promises as much as you want to. And us men, we want to make our queens happy, but sometimes we say some dumb crap. I swear, sorry, some dumb stuff just because we do mean well, but it just doesn't show up in the way it should. So that was kind of probably one of the biggest uh again failures in my life if you look at it from a divorce point of view, but it was one of the best teachers of my life because I really came out on the other side going, wow, I love my son, I actually love his mom. I can see now she's more suited doing what she's doing because it's been a few years down the track. She's doing exactly what she was doing that she's comfortable with. But I personally am now doing what I dreamt of doing. We didn't need to go through fighting about it. We should have just been a bit more authentic with our needs and then come into the union to try and say, hey, you don't have to maybe come on this journey, but I'm going with or without you. And that's a really hard thing to accept. But I think had we done that earlier, the relationship and the bad water would be less because we were all trying to drive each other into each other's fences.
Yeah.
I think you can draw that parallel in a lot of commitments we make with our families and everyone else. It's just like if you're born with this desire in you and the void has to be filled, just understand you're going to walk the road less traveled, but do your very best to communicate that things are going to take longer than you look, and you might have to do it alone if it takes that because happiness at the end of the day is what's going to keep you sane. But it's also a big graveyard. 80% of entrepreneurs don't make it. So you just really got to know what you're getting yourself into. But I would say it's still worth the fight. If I didn't make it to the where I am, or the mistakes I've made, and I'm still making more, I don't have a regret. I think you can feel that. It's just, I'm trying to find a way to communicate authentically and honestly in real time. But I think we only get that sometimes after the fact, right? So I don't know if that kind of helps, but those three things are, I would say, the biggest emotional stamina that has built me to where I am. That even now, I'll be honest, like I said, full disclosure, I'm going through, I call them winter months. I'm going through a winter month in my just business evolution because I'm taking on a project now that's really the ultimate project I've always wanted to build in Africa, but the stakes are higher. It's my people, it's my family involved, my community, it's around the environment. It's a macro global impact thing, but I'm also trying to contextualize myself in the African way. And I haven't been doing that for over 16 years, 20 years because I've been away. So it's a bit of humble pie to be eaten and Zambianizing myself again and just starting almost back to zero. But I put everything into it. And this is just cycles that you do at different levels. So maybe this is the first podcast I must quote me in a winter month. Usually I've been having summer months for years. But I think this is a really, really good time to record this for posterity for myself to say it just tends to happen every 10 years. And those are where you make your big decisions. It dips, but you become someone extraordinary on the other end. And I hope this is for someone that's listening to say, tough times don't last, tough people do, that's for sure. but you just gotta take it with grace and take your time with it. Because if you stay in business, you always have to make calculated risks, and sometimes they don't work out. But if you don't, you close your business because you can't stay stationary. So I don't know. That's a loaded way of sharing my lessons and my failures and how they connect, but those are big lessons.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for that transparency. I appreciate that on my end. How do you know? Because I'll give you an example. I started a business in Zambia last year. Um, my sister was helping me. She wanted to help me make some extra income because she's like, you know what, let's help you with something. So we built a borehole. My mom gave me a section of on her farm. We did a fish farm. So the first time around, my the gentleman that we had contacted, he gave us the fish. The fish, all of it died. This was in June. Even my mom was like, I don't do fish farming, but why are you putting fish in the pond in June? All right, everything died. So I said, okay, that's a loss. And then we tried again. We approached another company that sells the fish that we needed. They said, you know what, do it in September. So we again refilled it. We did the whole process. They had an inspection gentleman that used to come and inspect. They would come inspect. Long story short, the fish didn't grow to the point where it's supposed to grow because apparently the guy that used to come and inspect, he knew better. He didn't tell us that that fish doesn't grow bigger than what's on the market. That makes more money. So again, that was another loss. So in the whole process of having this fish grow, it was a lot of money being sent. The feed, as the fish get bigger, it was a lot of money that I spent to this. So I basically took a loss. So I just said, oh, you know what? Let's just close the whole thing. Let's take out the fish. We're ending up selling it like on the market, really. My sisters, I'm so grateful for them that they were able to do that. How do you come back from a loss? Like, where do you get the strength? I mean, if I had the money, for me, I want to do it again, try it, but I need to find people that can help me better in terms of the right fish. How do you come back from a fail? Like, how do you know, like, okay, I have to try it again. I have to try it again. I have to try it again after 20 times?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Ah, I think we've both been divorced, so let's go there. It's probably the easiest way
Okay.
that's universally applicable, but it's relatable to business.
Okay.
I find something. I speak business so much because it's like a religion for me.
I know. Sometimes I call you, I'm like, do not talk about business.
But it's like everything's connected, and that's so frustrating. I can imagine because it's probably like a doctor talking about some specialization, and not everyone speaks in that language. So it just shows I don't have many friends. But no, what I'm trying to say though, in a universal way, is for me, and I like to say things thinking, how would I like to hear this if I was on the other side of this? Yeah. So forgive me if it doesn't come across the right way, but the intentions are good. When I got married, okay, and back to what I was saying to you earlier, anything anyone does, I think, honestly, even the people we like to judge or hate, but just whoever is out there that we are like, we hate those type of people. That person really messed up the world. We love to demonize someone to make sense of the world. There always has to be a scapegoat, right?
Okay.
The point I'm making is like, once you know that and step away when you're the one in the receiving end of that, it's really not nice. And I've been there on both sides. But the point was, even in those times when things go wrong, back to what I was saying, when you fail in business, everyone says, you idiot, what do you think? But when you succeed, they call you a genius. And those two are just like black and white all the way through. So back to the context of normal for how do you deal with a failure? I think the first step is to realize, number one, you had good intentions. That's why you went in the first place. But two, you got to ask yourself the question, and this is back to the marriage conversation I had with myself, and I'm sure you help yourself. At what point are you going to call it quits? I think the simple answer for me is when you've lost the willingness to try again.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just universal.
Yeah.
It's out there, whatever. If you assess yourself and you go, I'm no longer willing to put that money into that project. I'm no longer willing to forgive this person. I'm no longer willing to hear that stupid peace story about why they didn't do what they needed to do to fulfill. If you think about it, it's my needs. It's not the needs as a husband, wife is the excuse we give ourselves. It's really they just didn't give you the need that you wanted them to. It comes down to that, right?
Yeah.
And when you kind of own it, and realize that person maybe one doesn't want to, or two, they're just not the person that gives that sort of need. But at the end of the day, it's you're the recipient. You're expecting something from that person: attention, love, care, financial support, whatever. So when you're no longer willing to put up with any of that, that's the time you call it quits. So for us entrepreneurs, here's the danger. We also sometimes I'll speak for myself. I get wrapped up in the self-righteous ego-ness to say, I'm gonna do this until it works, and some things are best to walk away.
Mm.
But back to my eco job, I'll use this as an example. At 12 years old, Nancy, I had a very strong pull. I won't call it clear, but it was a strong pull to come home and make a difference with my people at a macro level. See, the other people can say exactly the same, but it's at a micro level. And both are as significant as each other. But me, I will not be content if I just don't see almost like a level of a compound transformed, jobs created. And it doesn't have to have my name. If you notice, any of my brands don't have Aaron Mashano. I'm not that self-centric. But I hope you don't mind me just giving myself a little boost here, because I probably need to hear it more for myself at the moment. It's
This
just
is your
really,
stage.
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm just being completely vulnerable with everyone, because you're catching me at a very rare time where I'm just like my ass is hanging out, so I can
I
just
love it. I love it.
it's just like it's just like I really, really, really will be so happy with my life, knowing I'm out of this place and there's a pyramid of some sort, structure, business operating, helping so many people, and no one even knows I started. I don't know why that's the case. That's
Wow.
just how it's been for as long as I've been. And that's my intention. See, that's my willingness, back to the point I was making. So like you, I put in $50,000 plus, and I maybe not use figures because people now get freaked out. I put in a lot of money, and I think for anyone, if you have $100, and that's what you got, that's a lot of money. Yeah. So for me,
Mhm.
my lot of money was that,
Mhm.
and the project just hasn't started yet. We lost the money. Recently. I'm talking. What are we? March last month.
Oh God.
Real time. This is recorded. I worked so hard for that.
It's
I'm
gonna be that's
broken.
a lot of money.
Dude, I'm broken in ways I can't even explain to you. And then worse, I did stupid things to compensate for that loss, which strained the other relationships. I'll leave the details out for now. The story
Yeah.
is not yet. But you see, it's because I was just so good intention to say this is gonna employ thousands of people. This is gonna change their life. This is gonna empower some. It's mainly women, my people. So on paper, it all made sense. But the climate was I just miscalculated. So my point was, that wasn't the first $50,000 I've ever lost in a business. I've lost so much more than that. But the willingness, Nancy, was never there. And for that reason, I'll rock this t-shirt even though there's like, true story, $2 in my bank account in this company today. I don't want to say that so I can remind myself, but I promise you, it'll be $1 million business before that. I promise you. It just has to be. But the difference between this and say the other days when I was like egocentric, I want to succeed. See, the younger version of me, I wanted people to tell me I'm successful. I wanted people to call me rich. I wanted people to pat me on the back and say, Aaron, great job here, and I hope you can feel my sincerity. I just won't be happy with me if I don't do this. You understand the difference? It's just part of my identity. It's got to get done. And if it doesn't get done, I'll die trying getting it done because that makes me very happy. I feel very good trying to get this waste management project thing going. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know if my investors should watch this. No idea. But it's the right thing to do because I had this vision from when I was young. It's just crystallized. You know. So you haven't lost when you learn a lesson. That's the other thing. You only lose when you give up and or you were doing it for the wrong intentions because you lost your willingness. And when you lose those three things, then I think it's time to pivot, change your business, do something else. So I don't know if that helps you or anyone else, but I just know this ain't over because I'm still willing. And I think I do my relationships this way. I think our friendship is being built this way, as you notice. I'm willing to make time. It'll happen. But when that's gone, then I also communicate, say, hey, it's done because there's just no willingness. I think a lot of people don't come from that space. Maybe it's wrong or right on my part, but I think entrepreneurs just never lose that willingness to make it work, you know? Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
So how do you build a successful customer business based type of thing? How do you build that?
Asking me the whole season. Right? I'm like, I don't have any clients. They all run away. Oh my God. Oh, this is gonna be such a good podcast. Oh my God. I've never been there, right? I mean, I've never been caught here. This is interesting. Wow, how do I answer that question? I have so many answers, it's like diverging in my head.
Take your time, take your time.
No, only because you caught me in a very different season. This is so cool. I've never that's a good question. Look, I need to give some pre-disclosures, and I think I'll do this for the rest of my life. Define success. Pre-disclosure is not even English. Pre whatever.
No, it's fine. Listen.
Yeah, there's a word in law, but it's gone. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think in there's a couple of trappings, right? One, what is a good customer base, right? And in there is connected to, if I had a good customer base, does that make me successful? Because there's some people, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of traps in there for everyone, me included. So as much as in my summer days, I'll just jump in and tell you, well, and trust me, I have a course on that systems. But right now, I am really excited to question the Western business model and come up with something that has a hybrid of Western, Eastern, and Zambian, because I feel our people are living a very shadow life that will never succeed at our fullest potential, I believe, because we're just copy pasting systems that are tested and time tested and but we have our own destiny to create. And I'm, as you can tell now, I'm really in a funny place, but it's true. I just think I'm just gonna coach and build my businesses differently because one, I've realized I'm my own imposter. I have been trained Westernly. I have practiced Easternly. But honestly, I've never succeeded at the level I wanted, like I've done in the West and the East, in the Zambian context. So it's just time for humble pie. That's all, you see. And from that point, I'm saying, do I need to build my business the way the Western people told me with my clients in your client base? Or can I maybe now bring in something that's a bit more Afrocentric, like let's bring in the Ubuntu systems of what actually works around here, which are sometimes collectives or village banking style systems or Mateveto style village, whatever these guys do their thing. And then also understand that the Western systems are really oppressing us financially and try and still build in things that can make us more competitive globally. You know what I mean? I haven't quite got there yet, but again, back to why waste management is one of those vehicles I want to use to test all these assumptions. So short answer to your questions, I think you need clients, but I'll probably add a word to it. You need to understand the number of ideal clients who fit your core values, Western term, but also fit your ecosystem that you're currently placing your business to start. And then I would say the third one, which is very more African than anything, start questioning the identity of who you're going to become when you're successful before you get there. Because you might end up at the top of that mountain and realize you've been climbing the wrong mountain. And I've done this. So these three things, I think, go with your question. And I think when you have an ideal client, someone who wants to build a relationship with you, like we're doing, they want a long term, not transactional, flip fast, click on
Yeah.
YouTube, get viral content up there, but at the end of the day, you're not really making any outcomes. In
Yeah.
Africa, we need practical outcomes, right? This is where I'm struggling with business sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, look, I'll make a lot of money. What's going to be the impact here? You know?
I think that's my struggle at the end of the day as well. Like, what impact am I making? Because it's very easy, like in the industry that I am, like for podcasting, so many people reach out. You can have 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers, but are those people listening to my podcast?
Yeah.
So am I making an impact in those 20,000 people's lives?
Yeah.
So I love the angle that you actually
There you
responded
go.
to
Yeah,
the
the West will tell you, but you got to pay your bills. But I'm like, yeah, but why should you cut one arm off for the other? Why
yeah.
can't you make your money, build your amazing concrete pastures brand, and find that quality place where you're not compromised? I think you can through ideal clients. That's why I said that as to it's not just about the number, it's the quality of that client too. Because even ideal clients have the fourth criteria, which is a refer you client. So you shouldn't have to spend too much money. And I think that was your client even before you asked. I mean, I've referred you people because I like you. I didn't even know what this show is about. I mean, I've got my guts
I
out here.
know. That's what you just
Naked.
heard. It's like, I'll send you people. Okay.
But you're my people, yo. You know what I'm saying? But that's the that's the Africanization in me trying to come out more. I just think it's just how we used to do the Ubuntu thing, and we've
Yeah.
lost it. So we
Yeah.
must bring it. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's probably not what the old Aaron would say, but it's definitely what the future Aaron wants to maintain.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love the future, Aaron. That's good. And you're not the first one actually saying the copy and paste of our Zambian. Today, actually, I heard that word again, copy and paste. So it seems to be going around this copy.
Yeah. No, just question this. Just because it's time tested doesn't mean it's appropriate. That's a problem. We lean too much into time testing, but
Wow.
for who? Anyway.
Let's see. You've written a few books.
Yeah. Oh, I want to burn them now. No, that's
Before I
kidding.
get in those books,
You really caught me at a good time. I'm telling you.
last question on I guess entrepreneurship before we get into your books. What advice would you give? I think you've answered this in some way or another. Someone who's looking to start a business, what advice would you give them?
Don't do it. No, just kidding. Look, it's such a good one at this moment in my life. I'm getting emotional because I'm just really.
It's all good. It's all good, friend. It's all good.
Yeah.
People are just getting into our conversations that we have privately. So this is the conversation. So I'm glad we're sharing this with the whole world.
Yeah. Oh.
I have to shout out actually who connected us. Rani is the one who mentioned.
Yeah, I was also thinking, I forgot who connected us. It was Ronnie, wasn't it?
No, Rani mentioned you and his conversation with me. He's like, you need to reach out to Aaron Mashano. I was like, I'm like, "Okay, let's do this." So I started to do my research and I reached out. I was like, let me do my research first. So I did like a whole month of research on you, and then decided to find the nerve to reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know, I
yeah.
trust Marty. Those are my people together with his wife. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I appreciate him for recommending
We should both
that I
call
reached
him.
out to you. You
You're,
good
you're the
now?
No, I'm always good. It's always there, and I think it's good that people see that because look, I've been in entrepreneurship as I know it as a career, and I was doing a CV just because someone asked me for one. I've never done one because I never needed to. If you're the employer, why do you do a CV? It's just like it's weird, but it
Yeah.
was so good to do it and going through my projects and things like that. But the point I'm making was there was like a decade of this career, and I've never worked for anybody else.
Mm.
But that emotion in connection to your question came from the me that's talking, that's going through things, and you know this. I lost my parents last year, both of them.
So
Life
sorry.
happens to us, yeah. But the person that really wants to be an entrepreneur, I think the emotion came from the words. As non-glamorous as this sounds, you really have to fall in love with the struggle. You know?
Mm.
Um, and it's not a struggle in the sense of pain and heartache and no, that's not where the emotion. It was a joyfulness of being reminded, thanks to your question, because it just went straight back to how I even got into this thing.
Mm.
And not to slander the Christians or anyone else here, the best analogy I can give it, because I was studying this and I love the movie Passion of Christ,
Yes.
you know. And I'm not saying I'm Jesus or anyone in entrepreneur. It's just not it's not the connection. I just want to be clear. But I think what the message was about that from Mel Gibson was he was so passionate about the whole journey of his struggle to the end, knowing full well where it was going to go. And it was a painful process. But the liberation, the the meaningfulness would have not been conclusive and as deep and rich if you didn't see that as a passion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To make good something that was wrong or lost, if you understand.
Yeah.
So that's the emotion I was feeling. And I'm now like talking to myself, saying, wow, Aaron, you've really picked some rocky roads along the way, but it's been a passionate journey that I'm still so in love with. Back to the willingness. Uh, that if I were to tell me or Aaron or another person starting this journey, it's like went through the doing, and these are the trinkets of financials and trophies and accolades or someone honoring me to speak and listen to me. I honestly think I'm not worthy to give any advice. All I can tell you is just my experience says I've lived a full life because I enjoyed that struggle and I just took it on and I keep taking it on and I hope I never lose that willingness to bounce back because it's in the bouncing back is where the pleasure is. That's the juice. But unfortunately, some of us now go, okay, let me just go back up one more time just to see, don't do those parts if you can avoid them, of course. But they will come because you're trying to grow your business. You're trying to grow your impact. You can't get to areas you've never experienced by not risking what you've already done,
Mm.
unfortunately. So my advice would be that. And secondly, I would say entrepreneurship is not a lonely journey, but it's a journey you have to do alone. Because when you are happy with being alone and expressing yourself in this authentic way that we do now, all of us who try something different or try something that may not be making money, because people be like, why are you doing that? You don't get paid for it for years. You meet other like-minded people on the journey. And so it's not a lonely journey, honestly. But it does need you to be alone with that feeling. Because like I started with some of the relationships I've had that have been so significant teachers in my life, people just never saw it for me because they couldn't see it for themselves. Oh, my cat's going crazy out there. So you got to be okay with all that.
Hmm.
And at times you be ridiculed, but the same people come and celebrate you later if you come good. So I don't know if that helps, but that's where the emotion came. When I was so happy, I still have it. Because the day I lose the emotions, I wouldn't do anything I'm not passionate about it.
Yeah. No,
I
it
don't know.
shows. It shows. You can't continue to do what you do if you're not passionate about it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't understand my mom a lot of the times when she would make certain decisions in her business. And I was just like, why don't you just not do it? Because she'll get
Mhm.
a loss and then she'll go again and
Yeah.
again. And I'm just like, but why, mom?
Mhm.
But I get it. I get it now. Until I found what I love and what I'm passionate about. It's like you breathe and live it. And it shows. Even as you are talking to me and you're talking to us, it shows. It
Yeah.
shows.
Thank you.
But I appreciate you for that. Um,
I, you, huh.
let's get into your books. I found
Oh,
one.
goodness.
The Economic Migrant.
Good.
Is that you in that book?
You know, it's so good. I wrote it like it was me, but it was actually one of my students. True story.
True
She
story.
changed my
So I thought you
life.
were just hiding because I
Yeah.
read a little bit of pages. I was like, is he hiding to be somebody else?
No, no, I was blown
It's
away.
true to what is written.
No, so I used different characters that were around my space that are still in my space, some of
Mm,
them. But the characters were inspired by real people that I was interacting with. It's just for identity's sake, and you know, some of these are war
got
asylum seekers. I couldn't get into their full descriptions. There was a bit of abuse in there,
of
you know,
course.
so I had to be careful. But there were people there. Uh,
So what inspired you to write this one?
the students I was teaching on settlement English and job placement training. And that's why I said about my path. You could be a very big international student, but be very uh, elite and secluded from the African people. And when I
Mhm.
say African, for me, I was like Zambia and US and Europe and everywhere else. I never really thought about Africa as us. But when I went to Australia, because I fell into this training thing on weekends, like I told you how I started my training, and some of the accredited courses were designed for refugee asylum seekers, and they needed a black face to go there. And that's how I got into that business. Um, I went and met the Sudanese, Eritreans, um, Morocco, so many people, kids, Congolese, everyone, and their lives came to me. And I never do anything in half bursts, as you can tell, but I then have to pick them up from the places they lived,
Mm.
seeing how the detention centers were working, hearing now the real story of how they had 14 people in the family, but these are just a mother who just picked up some people along the way running away from death, genocide. And I'm thinking, Zambia has no people. It just opened me up in ways I can't explain. But it made me more African because I was just like, Jesus Christ, we're so separated. Um, so I wrote that book because also it was like a marketing tool because you know when you're working with these government funded programs, there's
Yeah.
material, this and that. So it was almost like a introduction book to multiculturalism. These days they're calling it inclusion. We didn't have all these fancy stuff, man. I feel like I should be a
Diversity and inclusion. Hey.
you know what I'm saying? It was just like multiculturalism, you know. So I was trying to make sense of that, but also say entrepreneurship is a way to go because if they don't want to give us the job, let's create our own jobs. That was kind
Yeah.
of the message. And we did start a movement, man. I mean, it went into four states in Australia, and that's where the traveling started as well. Just like I wanted to meet more migrants. So this is partly why I also said yes to this show. It just reminds me of that experience, and the migrant story was so universal. It's just beautiful. But there's a lot of trauma that comes with it for some people as to why they leave. Yeah. So yeah, so the book was just a tool to open those doors, and then people then sign me up and take my facilities and trainings, and just go all over the place there, and I just loved it. And in my mind, I'm like, I gotta go home and meet people in these countries. I mean, it's 50, 250, whatever now countries in the continent. They're so similar. They make me think we're so different.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Oh, that was mind blowing to me. Still is. So that motivated me to set a date to come home. I really did.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's in my book. But yeah, so it wasn't me, but it was me in it, of course, because I was still the trainer. True story. Meeting my students, coming late and smashing the
Hmm.
crap out of it. I still do
Yeah.
that today. I'm still a tough love coach. I love it. Massive respect.
Tough love coach. Oh God. I know.
Yeah. So that's a migrant story. That's amazing. And I,
Wow.
I made it short stories because someone said to me once, uh, sorry, how do you say? It was such a beautiful quote that really touched me about short stories. He says, sorry it took me so long. Sorry I ran out of time. So I wrote you a short note. You
Wow.
know, what they're trying to say is they really thought about everything they needed to say in less words, which took them longer than if you just scribbled 4 pages. And that really stuck with me about why short stories are so powerful. Um, so I tend to want to write short stories. If I were to call myself a writer, and be honored to be one. I'm definitely more prone to short stories. I love short stories. Yeah, so
No,
my style of
with time, with a lot of people now, they either listen very
mm,
short time and they keep it moving. So short stories help with that. And I'm glad
yeah,
you're able to tell um, your student story.
yeah,
I read a little bit of it and
yeah,
I was like, wow, this
yeah,
is this is a lot of us in here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. I
Like,
forgot about that book. That's good.
this is why I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. Please take it on, and you taking it to levels. I'm just so. I have to say, I'm just so proud of you, and I could have never envisaged my multicultural story getting to where you're going, and you're going to reach so many people, and we need this. Um, and I
I'm
think you're the
humbled.
perfect
Thank
space for
you.
it, perfect values for it. I'll promote you to you. Just tell me to shut up, but it's really needed. So I was so happy. I didn't even connect the two with my little book back in the day. This is yours is just like stellar, man. Well done.
Oh, come on, come on. You
Just
started.
something.
We
Yeah.
started. This is why I'm humbled to be on
Good,
this.
good, good, good.
You started the foundation, and we're elevating it a little bit more. Somebody else, hopefully, my daughter gets it to a different level.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Definitely.
so it's laying foundation for each person, and I'm glad
Yeah.
that you did that for me and so many others. Um,
You're
you are, and a lot of us, with the definition of what's possible. And
welcome.
I was excited to, I've told you this before. I was excited to bring you on this way. People can really be inspired with your journey. And when you told me there's no off limits questions, I'm like, this is dangerous.
No, go for it. No off limits. I'm in a good state to be open about everything. So it's
Dangerous. I'm like, Mashano, do you want me to go there?
yeah,
You're like, yes. And I'm glad
yeah,
you're able to give us that. I'm
yeah.
truly
And
grateful.
I just hope it connects with someone somewhere in the season. And it's all seasons. Someone may be in a very different time and place. This will to be too deep,
Yeah.
and I know that feeling too. So it's recorded, It's but I know there are a lot of us post-COVID,
Oh,
post-crisis, post-trauma, post something.
yes.
Just need this tone, if that's the right
Yeah.
word. And also understand, I got a great bio, but I'm still trying to figure things out. My goodness. I don't think you ever stop figuring things out, particularly if you're growing. Like I'm just in a bigger box now. Like I was in this little box that I thought, oh, and then I figured that out. Then I moved into another box, figured out that little box was just a quarter. And then now I'm
Have
in
you
another
been able
box.
to like get on this journey? Because it takes a long time for a lot of us to figure it out. Like how you been able to be in this space? Because me and you talking, you are on a different level, and I'm like, I'm not there yet. Just calm down.
You're there, trust me. I'm probably right back down there. I have a tendency to step down a bit. No, because I just don't think they're levels in the same way. But in answer to your question, I think the day to end for me is the day I stop being curious.
Gotcha.
Curiosity about yourself, about others, why you tick, why did I make that choice? Where are the patterns?
Mm.
Uh, so I think someone said, well, I read somewhere, I teach it too to some level, I used to teach it anyway. At the highest level of grit, you know what it is? The highest, like, gritty people are the people, like entrepreneurship is about grittiness. But the highest level of grit, the act, do you know what it is?
Mm.
Reflection, self-reflection. It takes work to self-reflect.
Say that again.
So that's a form of curiosity, you see. So,
Wow.
see what I'm saying? So you just got me in a deep mode, but it's true. So the point is, like, I act in a certain way. Maybe I'll do it for a while, and then if something familiar happens again, I'm like, this has happened to me at some point. Where is this habit coming from? One, is this constructive? Two, how can I then uh, put a flag in it so I can remind myself next time to see this as a milestone? That's why on the word, the one when you step a landmine. That's it. If
Mm.
it's something that really destroyed me or my relationships or my health, just took me back or off track or off authenticity. And I'll be honest, I stepped in a landmine just recently in this situation in Africa. Just got in a desperate situation, like I told you already, and just miscalculated a few things, and it really went south. But if it went north, I'll be 10 miles ahead. But I'm
You,
so
you
glad it
you not have time for me over here.
Yeah, but well, you see, you just open up so many doors in another way, but I'll never soak it in to go, wow, this will be good at $1 billion because you can blow up at $1 billion too. You see,
Yeah. No, 100%.
and for me, $1 billion represents 1 billion people. That's our African continent.
Yeah.
I don't want that. Moving out So the point, like you said, is like you just gotta be curious about yourself. And so for me, as you can see, I'm like introspective, rebuilding, but also trying to listen to my own narrative. I'm not a victim of the situation. I don't want to ever be that person. I remember that past self, and we talked about our relationship. Sometimes how people are so quick to label you and make you something you're not, and you lose yourself in the process just trying to fit in. And I'd say to hell with that, by the way. But you should use some of these situations to do a social check on yourself. How are you showing up in social situations? What's the
Mm.
reputation and brand you still bring to the space? Is this still authentically who you are? Because you could change. Like you're now a very different woman to I think when you're married. You've
Yep.
empowered yourself enough, and it shows. I can feel it. Your identity is different. So your old self and your new self, you can't have the same story
Night and day.
about yourself. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So at least concrete pastures here, uh, safe spaces are so beautiful because your friends should also now need the time to adjust to your new identity and not demonize you because you've changed. And that's where most of us retract back to the old self, even if we're not happy with us. It's comfortable, you know. So that's where curiosity should take you, and then you act on it and go, okay, lessons learned to change, or I still should go back and do that again, but let's do it better because I've got experience now.
Mm.
And I think I'm in the second box more than the first because I'll still take risks. I'll be crazy not to, but I can really see more 360 because I'm letting people pull in now and say, hey, listen, what do you think of that thing? Because last time I did this on my own and I assumed this. Now you're here. Is this what I think it is? Oh, no, it's good. Go. Okay, I'll go. But I'm never gonna not go. It's just I'm gonna ask more questions. So that's another curiosity. What do other people think about my situation? Who I invested? Like I'm invested in you. You invested in me. Is it still the Aaron offline, online? You need to know that. Help me if I'm a little bit off tangent on that, you know what I mean? And have those courageous conversations. Yeah. So that's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah.
Um, all right. Well said. What are you working on now that we can support you on?
Yay! I'll always work on me, but I think I need a therapist for that. No, just
We
kidding.
have better help for that. Better
I
help.
know, no. The lady I told you I'll connect you with can't wait. I think you're gonna blow up, but you see, I can't help it. I'm already connecting with this next one. But anyway, honestly,
I can't with
there,
you.
there are three things that I really would love the audience and you to like help me. Now, this is so funny for me to say help. I love creating the eco tribe community. I really don't know in terms of capacity what that looks like, but I'm very sure that the diaspora, I think, one, need to, and I'm a big Claude Lumumba, so if I quote him and you think I'm clever, it's not me, it's his words, but he's the man. I'll get him. If you want him on your podcast, I can make that happen. But the point is, but just I don't know how many years it take me, but he and I in conversations. But anyway, the point is like the diaspora want to gain financial wealth while they're in the West, whether they want to stay there or not.
Mhm.
I was one of those. But like we talked about, three things are necessary. One, you must start to believe and trust in our own people. And I'll put my hand up. I am not the most trustworthy person because I'm still human. And when I am in desperate places, which is recent reminder, I do some stupid, desperate things. But
Yeah.
that does not mean I'm desperate all the time. What it just means is two, you need opportunities to pilot projects that are, let's call them African owned, adding value, all that jazz. But if we don't go in with like seed funding mentality uh, to people who are already on the ground trying to do things, they'll never be able to compete and scale with foreigners and expats. Why? We don't have the capital. And I'll call it liquidity for operational cost to validate ourselves enough. And I'm talking from experience. Yeah.
Mm.
Right? And that's where the desperation kicks in, and then people start stealing or misembezzling money. Nah, 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 nah. It's just because the climate just gets so hard. So, step one, pick some champions and just go in with blind faith to support them. But don't put everything in into thinking you're gonna flip the money. Go in as you would to pilot to support them to get to the next stage. That's what I'm saying. Number two, and this is supporting me if you want Eco Tribe to be one of those, by the way. But it's like I'm just being honest about the situation of the person you're dealing with, right? But number two is when you do invest, don't just invest your money, invest your skills. Make a volunteer sabbatical type of trip. Don't just make it about coming home, drinking, and showing other people you have so much money for the little period you're there, but just swiping your credit card. And, we've all done this. Go back home, and then you have to work that off to pay off whatever mortgage off your home, whatever it is that you're going on. But when you come home, and because you already invested that first step of money into a specific project, could be hopefully preferably closer to your hometown, or at least somewhere you can get to, then come and spend some time of your little holiday with your family, however it is, your children particularly. I have a son who's Australian. I fantasize about this, but I could make a holiday part business, part pleasure, and come and volunteer. We need more volunteers on the ground with us because the perspective is so different here. So that when someone asks you for money and you wonder why they're asking for 3,000 kwacha, you think the cost of living is cheaper, but they have a funeral to deal with, like I just did personally. A coffin alone can cost $7,000
Mm.
in conversion terms. There's no insurance for it here. Why? Manufacturing, economies of scale. So some things are cheaper, but some things are very expensive here. And business is one of those. So by you volunteering your skills and coming in to appreciate these nuances, I think we'll be more forgiving uh, when people make these failure mistakes like you did with your fish. Just understand you could probably fail 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times before you flip something. Whereas in the West, maybe you fail one or two because the systems and infrastructure are more stable.
Yeah.
Then the last one I would encourage would be in terms of how to support me or people like me is honestly, at least where I'm at now, there needs to be an opportunity where I feel people um, just get back to that Ubuntu thing. We're giving ourselves ideas on how we can create. I'm calling it for now Afrocentric business models. And who better to come with that aspect than people from the West, but then let people on the ground give you some input. I was so naive. And yet there's some very successful people doing things here and thriving. They're called the Chinese. The reason is they're just more adaptable. I think the Western way only just won't work. And I would like to say the Eastern way isn't the solution either, just because they're thriving right now. I think we just need to put a hybrid of all those and then find something that's Afrocentric and create it together. So, Eco Tribe is my company, open to anyone who's into the environment. They can also find contacts for us abroad that are taking plastic from us. We do HD plastic processing. So it would be cool to
What does
people.
Eco Tribe do? I know what it does,
Eco
but
Tribe is it's a waste management, but we do plastic processing. Okay, so when I say processing, we'll take HD plastics, okay, sort them out, clean them up, and that's why a lot of women collect from the compounds, densely populated areas, brings it to us, we bale it, we then, in the process, this is what I'm working on, but we process it and crush it so it's into flakes and things that can then be melted back into usable pipes, pavers, roofing tiles, and it's very concrete and things like that. So that's where I'm going, but the factory needs to be built. And let's take that
wow.
one thing.
No, that's an
So
amazing initiative.
yeah, yeah. But the point is, like, if we can get international markets, diaspora out there going to meet manufacturing companies that are buying this stuff from China, but China is buying it from us, right? So if we can like create a direct channel to some of the places that people are buying these inputs and figure out how to customize it for the demand of the West, get paid in the dollars, we can then pass all that money back to the collectors who are homeless kids, widowed people living in dump sites. That's the whole game here. Who
Yeah.
don't get paid much because they're so low on the value chain, right? So it will take an African centered business to want to pay them more, but you can't pay someone more if you're not making profits as a business, you see? So that's why we still need that international component to say, okay, I can sell this, for example, at $1 a kilo, then I can give 50 cents back to the client and profit 20. That's the business model. Very straightforward. But if I get paid 70%, 70 cents, then I can't give that 50 cents because machinery alone will eat it. You see what I'm saying? So
Mm.
there's just these helps that the West people don't think about because we're also so busy in jobs there. I mean, it's crazy in the West. You just work so hard just to pay bills. So sometimes to get in your car with traffic, kids, and daycare, or to go off to some factory to go help out isn't exactly something someone should do. I get that. But if we could go the extra mile for each other, that would really help. You know? And I'm not talking my business, but there's so many other industries, beauty, technology. We still need that Western connection. And who better than the diaspora on the ground to build that? And I think that's why we're just not connected enough.
Yeah.
Money alone is not the solution.
I love the initiative. We're all environmental conscious. I
Yeah.
think all over the world now with global warming, with making sure that no waste is going in the oceans and stuff like that. This is
Yeah.
great. I haven't heard of this aside from you, that nobody else is doing it. in Zambia, and I think it's great. I have no doubt, for anybody listening out there, I have Mashano's contact in the show notes. Support. It's a great initiative. We want to be all green everywhere around the world, and I think this could be a great thing for the whole of Africa. Really.
Yeah, and it's cash for trash, right? So people don't have to wait for my old 3 months entrepreneur program of theory, you see. And this is where I'm making my transition. You probably hear I'm making transitions. It's just I love coaching and consulting, but an online course won't help an average Zambian who needs to eat tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if that Zambian picks up 1 kilo of plastic, brings it to us, we pay them the money, they eat, they go to school. See, the time frame, back to the Africanization of business, the time frames must be shorter. But when they're eating and doing all this and they see the economy is working out, they'll sit through any course. You see, and that's the thing I'm flipping at the moment, which is unfortunately necessary here, which the West people are still catching on. It's like courses alone and funded by organizations, I won't call them by name. People walk out with certificates, but they're still starving. They haven't built their business because it's not just capital they need. These other things we're talking about. So if people can call into that, I think it'll be amazing. It has to be immediate. And I'm not saying I have the solution yet. I'll keep you posted, but I've just seen the transformation when a woman goes, "Oh my God, I turned my compound house into a sorting bay," and you're seeing like the whole community, and it's usually the women. They make 3 grand kwacha a week, and the houses are just like organized, and all these kids from the streets are coming with plastics, and everyone's trying to get the cash. But see, financial literacy is then it's applicable directly. Entrepreneurship is direct, and then these women end up housing some of these kids. I mean, women just do some extraordinary things, yeah. But see, until a Western or Zambian expat or someone comes and sees that, that's the value chain. It'll be very hard to support it and give it time to work. So straightforward. So yeah.
I can talk to you forever. You and I.
Look at the time.
I
We were
know.
supposed to do an hour.
I know.
Yeah, it's good.
You and I can talk. I'm so grateful that you were able to make time for us. And last question.
Oh, I thought that was it. I was like, one. No, go ahead. I know it's not the last question, but the last question for this episode.
Yeah, I know. Yes, for this episode. Have you found your concrete pastures?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna say that in a way that would sound a bit
sarcasm. I see that.
No, and it's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Like when you find your why, Simon Sinek here, by the way, but I think it goes beyond. The worst times are the most confusing.
I've actually seen his presentation. I did that presentation for my team, when you find your why. So yeah, I saw it on YouTube, and one of my huddles in the morning, I was like, let's talk about our why.
Yeah, concrete pastures, man. I'm concrete pastures. I think that's even a better word than why. Because the concrete part is like it's firm, you can stand on it, regardless what happens. I don't know if that's what it was your intention. But pastures is like for me opportunities, it's the savannah, it's green, or at least in rainy season. So there's limitless possibility, but also limitless dangers, but it's uncertain. So the answer is yes, but I would probably put an FES if I was in Australia, but in a Christian context, I'll say absolutely yes. But I also like to say I'm also open for it to be more concrete over time. So I'm not forcing the certainty of my journey here to define it as the only way to go. Because if I did, I would still be coaching somewhere else. Equal tribe would not exist.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone else gives themselves the flexibility and what's concrete. Like you and I were talking. What's important now wasn't what was important 10 years ago.
100%.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can't say that 10 years ago it wasn't concrete. It was just for that time.
Yeah.
Is that making sense? I don't know.
100%, 100%. Because now our conversations are even more different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still childish though. Some things haven't changed.
We know that. Do we know?
It's so funny. You took 2 hours. How did you do that? That's so good. Oh, I love it.
All right. I'm so grateful again. How can we find Mashano, Aaron Mashano? How can we find you?
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge you, woman. You are a queen. You are doing things. And I don't think people take podcasts to thank hosts, but this has been the most richly insightful, nourishing time I've had in a long, long time. And I don't do podcasts much, as you know, on purpose. So I'm so glad I said yes. You healed me. You've given me time to express even my some thoughts I've been trying to clarify for a long time. And I just want to say you got a gift, and I think it's one that whether people tell you or not, people walk away bigger than they were before they started this podcast. And if I feel this way, and I know Ronnie does, I'm sure the rest of the hosts you do. So I just wanted to first acknowledge and say thank you for doing such a great job.
Thank you.
You're changing the world, honey. You really are. So how people find me is they call you, and they can get to you through that, because you're my filter as well. I can't have too many crazy people around me. I'm crazy enough as it is, right?
I know.
But no, in all honesty, just search my full name. I'm everywhere, but contactable through my close friends. Because I think now God has put me here to focus, and I probably will do less and less things virtually. It's just my people on the ground that I need, I think, to be a bit more of an example. So yeah, that's just where it's at for the next few years. But I'm around for you, for sure.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. This has been so good.
I know, right?